a handful of Donald Trump's former aides and advisors.
They cheated with the machines.
State election officials ignored or violated the state law.
Mr. Clark, yes. How are you? Good morning, especially with DOJ.
Could face criminal referrals from the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. The committee considering referrals for former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, lawyer John Eastman, former Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark, and former Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani, sources tell CNN.
We want to make sure no one slips through the cracks. We want to make sure that the key organizers and movers of this attack don't escape the scrutiny of the justice system.
There's still no final decisions on who to refer to the Justice Department and for what offenses, but the committee hopes to make those decisions in a meeting on Sunday.
Do you expect to make a decision about who would be on the list of criminal referrals at this Sunday meeting?
That's the plan, yes.
CNN previously reported the committee is also weighing a referral for former President Trump.
Even though what we're doing is just making a referral of our views, we want to take it very seriously.
The committee aiming to release its final report and its list of criminal referrals on December 21st.
There will be some kind of a public-facing event. We've not decided exactly what that would look like.
As the committee wraps up its work, former President Trump is facing legal jeopardy on a number of fronts.
The case against the former president just gets worse and worse and worse.
He faces scrutiny for the plot to try to upend the results of the 2020 election, as well as his handling of sensitive government documents after leaving the White House. The FBI recovered more than 100 documents with classified markings after searching Mar-a-Lago in August.
It's not a crime. And they should give me immediately back everything that they've taken from me because it's mine.
A subsequent search by a firm hired by Trump's lawyers uncovered 2 more documents with classified markings from a Florida storage unit. And today, Trump decided not to ask the Supreme Court to revive a special master reviewing the evidence from Mar-a-Lago, a source tells CNN, after a lower court struck down the third-party review.
Now, we are also learning from sources that the Justice Department has asked a federal judge to hold Donald Trump in contempt for failing to comply with that subpoena over the summer. This is all happening in secret court proceedings, but there is a hearing, again, all behind closed doors on Friday, where a judge will consider this matter. If held in contempt, Trump or his post-presidency office could face fines, Jake.
All right, Sara Murray, thanks so much. Let's discuss with my august panel. Kasie, just to go over these names again, the committee is considering referrals for former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, lawyer John Eastman, former Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark, and former Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani.
Yes, according to our reporting. And I mean, look, that list, I don't think there's any surprises truly on that list. I mean, these are the people, particularly if you are an attorney, you do there's potentially more room for you to be breaking the law, especially if you're engaged in some of the type of conduct that Mark Meadows and Rudy Giuliani have apparently been engaged in. But whether this, matters in the long run, I'm really interested to learn more, and I'm hoping we learn more as this final report comes out about why the Justice Department has not received transcripts and information from the January 6th committee that they've asked for. I feel like there's got to be a reason for why that's been happening, and I haven't been able to get my sources to give me a good explanation. I'm hoping that we learn more about that.
One of the things that's interesting, Audie, is the fact that there are people who have been provided evidence and testimony and all sorts of information to the January 6th committee that apparently the Justice Department has never even talked to. So it does make some of the people who are witnesses for the January 6th committee wonder why the Justice Department is so behind.
Right. I mean, I think we should be wary of speculating on that because holistically, it's not as though DOJ is not investigating the totality of this, right? They've had some seditious conspiracy convictions that they've had in recent weeks. Jack Smith has now sent out subpoenas to swing states where the fake elector scheme was being pushed.
Jack Smith, the special counsel.
The special counsel. So it's hard to look at it in an isolation and say, well, what about the criminal refers, et cetera, because there is an active investigation going on. And I do think we're going to know fairly soon, given the speed with which he's moving, where those things are finally going to intersect. And
David Urban, this all happens at the same time that Donald Trump, he's being criticized right now for meeting with a Pizzagate QAnon conspiracy theorist, that insane theory about the pedophiles at the pizzeria. And that comes a few weeks after Trump met with a couple prominent anti-Semites and Holocaust deniers.
Yeah, inauspicious is not a word that you would, I don't even know, like, how do you describe, since his announcement of a re-elect, it hasn't gone smoothly, to say the least, right? So I'm not sure who's steering the ship, right? I mean, there are presumably staff people around the president. There are the president himself, right? But how does this all occurring? If he's running a campaign, it doesn't seem he's doing too good of a job at this point.
And Ashley, even former White House advisors Larry Kudlow and Kellyanne Conway are confused about what's going on down there in Mar-a-Lago. Take a listen.
I don't understand what our former boss is doing. I love the guy, but I do not understand Kanye West hanging out with white nationalists, hanging out with anti-Semitic people, talking about ending the Constitution or postponing the Constitution. I don't get it.
But again, he should completely distance himself from that. I think he said, I didn't know anything about this guy. I was trying to help Kanye West.
And I disagree with everything they say and stand for.
But he's not.
No, he's not. And I don't think he will. And I'm not surprised. And I don't have any high expectations for our former president. I think he's spiraling. I don't think he's listening to anyone but the voices in his head. And I think we will see more and more. But I don't know if that means that Donald Trump will go away. I still think
not going away.
He's not going away. And we'll see if anyone steps up to really contest him in 2024. And if not, I mean, the Republicans are in real big trouble if this continues to be the headline. One thing I will say that is interesting is, will the stories and topics shift once Republicans take the House and they start to govern and committees get formed? It's interesting to see how they might try and usurp some of his headlines with some of their investigations.
One of the things that's interesting is that, Donald Trump meeting with Holocaust deniers and anti-Semites, just fairly blatant ones, Kanye West, also known as Ye, and Nick Fuentes, prompted this from Kellyanne Conway.
I would like to hear more from his daughter, who's Jewish. I would like to hear more from his son-in-law, who's the only person from the administration, Larry, to benefit in the B's with billions. It'd be nice for them to weigh in when you and I are expected to.
Wow.
That was an interesting comment, I thought.
Yes, yes, that is a very interesting
Especially because it could have come 2 years ago, right, after Charlottesville. And I think I am not a person at this point who is wondering who's around him, who's wondering what it all means. Actions speak louder than words. And at this point, every action by the president is signaling to him the constituency that he wants to maintain. Because it's very easy to say no or not be in these meetings.
Right, exactly right. He's not distancing himself from these individuals because he doesn't want to lose any votes. He thinks that there are people who believe in this Holocaust denial and anti-Semitism, and he wants their support.
Yeah, and well, the lengths that he's gone when he does receive support from these people to not alienate them is just remarkable. He clearly is embracing them. This is the big difference between. Remember that moment where somebody stood up and raised the racist birther conspiracy about Obama at a John McCain town hall, and John McCain stood up and he said, no, we're not doing that, right? And that's really the big difference between Donald Trump and many of the leaders of the Republican Party that came before. There's always been an element in our society that has believed many of these terrible things, that has held racist views, that have been anti-Semitic. But the difference is that our leaders have been willing to say, this is not acceptable. And the reality is people do listen to our leaders. This is why there are so many Americans now who think the election was stolen, because they view Donald Trump as their leader, and that's what he's telling them to do. And the fact that he's not doing it, it's I'm sorry, but it matters a lot. It's important, and I'm glad we're focusing on it.
And I'd say this is, the lesson that Republicans learned in this midterm, right, was that all the voters sent a message, like, we don't want this anymore, right? We need to move away from this. Independents broke wildly away from Republicans, sending a message, we don't want this Trump stuff anymore. We need to move back to the center. All Trump candidates, there was an infographic that we had up before on the network where Trump candidate after Trump candidate after Trump candidate after Trump lost. Yeah. Right? They lost because that message does not resonate. People want, they reject this. So the American people reject this. Voters reject this. I hope at some point the Republican Party stands up and say, we reject it very loudly. Otherwise, we're not going to win. We're going to keep losing.
But some of these races were still really close. We just came out of Georgia, and when you think Herschel Walker should have been beat by 15, 20 points, he wasn't. It was in a runoff because Warnock couldn't get 50%. So I still think, to Kasie's point, there is a group of this population that have been emboldened and continue to be emboldened with Trump's behavior. And he is not going to turn his back on that component because he thinks he can split in the primary and win.
I just want to make it clear. I believe it's not nearly, it's not a majority of the Republican Party by any long stretch. It is a thin slice, enough to get you through a primary, and 30, 33%, whatever that number is, that's what Trump's courting here, not the bulk of the Republican. There's
but
60, 70%
is what
but
about
but 60, 70% of the Republican Party rejects this kind of views. Okay, just let's be clear.
I mean, to go back to the original soundbite that you played, Jake, too, I take Audie's point for sure, but I think also what Kellyanne was kind of saying is that, hey, like, these guys are really, Jared Kushner benefited. He made a lot of money from his father-in-law being in the White House, and now he's not actually taking a role, standing up and saying, hey, this is wrong, when he is probably the most prominent Jewish member of the former administration. Ivanka Trump has put out a statement saying, I'm not doing this again. Right? I mean, that says a lot about.
She didn't say I'm not doing this again because of anti-Semitism,
no,
right?
Of course
It was
not. She
I'm
said,
not going to participate in
continue to
another
live my
round.
private life.